How's it going, everyone? I hope you're having an awesome day. Welcome to the channel. I'm the ChainBaker, and in today's video I've got another delicious multigrain bread for you. It's a semolina bread made with a soaker, so let's go to the kitchen and have a closer look at it. You know, I had never made semolina bread, but I must say I quite enjoyed it. It has a bit of a sweetness to it, and I just love the amber color. The little millet grains dotted around the dough make it a pleasure to eat, and the best part is that it's super easy to make. Notice the crack on top of the loaf. It is there because the dough is not scored before baking, and that is intentional, and I'll show you exactly how this method works. So let's get right to it and see what we need. I will use a proofing basket, but you can just use a bowl lined with a cloth. We'll also need a bowl for mixing, scales, dough scraper, temperature probe, but this time we don't require any razor blades or sharp knives. The dough will score itself, which is a pretty funky trick, and it is far easier than it sounds. I will use my cast iron pan with a lid for baking, but don't worry if you don't have one of these, you can bake this bread without it. But this will give me a superior bake. Now on to the ingredients. We'll use some fine ground semolina, but you can use durum flour instead. We'll also need some white bread flour, water, yeast, salt, millet, which is all my favorite grains. You could replace this with seeds. Next up is some oat bran. You can use wheat bran or even oat flakes instead of this. And as our fifth grain, we'll use some coarse ground cornmeal. And finally some fennel seeds for flavor. These work really well with all the ingredients. So first things first, we need to make a soaker. A soaker is used in breads that contain whole grains and seeds. It is a method used for softening those grains and seeds. Simply combine the oat bran, the millet, the cornmeal and fennel seeds, and then add boiling water. You want to use boiling water because the millet's quite tough. Mix it well, then we can cover it and leave it to soak for around 45 minutes. During this time the grains and seeds will get fully hydrated and the mix will cool down. You can also make this a day ahead of time. If your kitchen is quite warm, you might want to add some salt from the main dough into the soaker. It will prevent it from spoiling. As ever, I'm using cold water because I'm kneading by hand, this dough is going to warm up. So add the rest of the water to the soaker, follow that with the yeast, the salt, and then give it a good mix. You want to hydrate the yeast and dissolve the salt before adding the flour. The semolina will make this dough a little bit sticky, and unlike regular wheat, its proteins do not result in very strong gluten. So to help us with kneading, we'll combine all the ingredients, mix them all up to a dough, and then we'll tip the dough out on the table and we'll leave it to rest. This resting stage will help with hydrating the semolina and the flour. It'll make the dough less sticky and easier to work with. And the best part is that it's a passive step. You don't have to do anything, just leave it to sit for 15 minutes, don't even cover it. I'm going to use my regular kneading method. What I like to do is press down and forwards with the heel on my right hand, then using the fingers on my left hand I fold the piece of dough under the heel on my right hand, then turn it and repeat. I find this to be the most efficient way of kneading a low hydration dough like this. We'll knead it for around 6 minutes, and if it gets a bit sticky then scrape it up and continue. If you want to use a mixer, then 4 minutes on medium speed should do it. But don't mix it more than that, because it is very easy to overmix semolina dough. It will fall apart if you mix it for too long. So it's been around 6 minutes, the dough is nice and cohesive, it's still slightly sticky, but that's totally fine. Now we can place it in a bowl and take its temperature. Around 23 to 24 degrees Celsius just about right for this. That's 73 to 75 Fahrenheit for my American friends. We'll be cold proofing this dough for extra flavor, so cover it and pop it in the fridge for 1 hour. After an hour of chilling, we need to give it a fold. The main reason for folding this dough is to help it cool down more quickly. It is quite a large piece of dough, so the outside will cool down before the middle does. By folding it, we are distributing that temperature evenly throughout the dough. So drop it out on the table with the smooth side down, flatten it out, and fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle to reach point where it started. Then flip it smooth side up again, tighten it against the table, and back in the bowl it goes. And what was on the outside is now in the middle. And now we can go into the fridge for cold bulk fermentation. This recipe is quite flexible. You can leave this dough in the fridge for 12 to 18 hours. It's the next day and it's puffed up beautifully. I love using this glass bowl. It gives us a very clear look of what's going on. And this is ready for the final shaping now. Told you this was a super easy recipe. This dough is not sticky at all. I could have just skipped the flour. But anyway, release your dough from the bowl using your dough scraper and then drop it out on the table with the smooth side down. Shaping works exactly how the fold did. Flatten the dough into a disc. Then fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until it reach point where it started. Then flip it smooth side up again and tighten it against the table. It does not need to be extremely tight, just make sure it's nice and round. By the way, I have another awesome multigrain recipe on the channel using similar methods to this one. It also uses cold bulk fermentation and a soaker, but unlike this one, the soaker is cold. Right, now I'm going to show you the method of getting that crack on top of the loaf. All you need to do is place the bread in a basket the wrong way up. So seam side down, smooth side up. Now you can cover it up and leave it for the final proof. The proofing time will depend on the temperature of your kitchen. Around 3 to 4 hours should do it. If it needs longer, leave it for longer. But during the final hour of fermentation, preheat your oven. 210 degrees Celsius, fan off. Also preheat your pan. If you don't have a pan, preheat a thick metal tray. This is puffed up beautifully. Right, so the cast iron pan with the lid is used to trap steam inside whilst baking. But you could bake the loaf on a tray covered with a metal bowl. But regardless of what you do, take your pan out and invert the bread on it. And of course the seam side is going to be on top now. And that is exactly what we want. The complete opposite of a traditional bake. And instead of scoring it, we'll just let it open up naturally. You want to cover the loaf and bake it for 20 minutes with the lid on. After 20 minutes, remove the lid. This is always my favorite part. Just look at those awesome random cracks in the loaf. But we need to pop this back in the oven for another 20 minutes just to finish the crust off. And there you have it. A beautiful dark amber colored semolina loaf. Packed full of multigrain goodness. And it's so tasty. It's got a nice sweetness to it without adding any sugar. The slow cold bulk fermentation gives it a deeper flavor. It makes the crust crispier. It will make the bread stay fresher for longer. I just can't get over the beautiful pattern on the crust. You just know it's going to look different every single time you bake it. I think this quote-unquote scoring technique has a special name, but I could not find it anywhere. Do let me know down in the comments if you know what it's called. So what do you think this recipe? Have you ever used a soaker before? Which kind of grains and seeds do you like using in baking? Let me know down in the comments. To see another recipe using the same technique, click right here. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.